Welcome in for another edition of Bet. I'm Anita Marks, your host for another riveting Monday Night Football game with the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Colts. We'll have picks and plays from Erin Dolan as well as Joe Fortenbaugh. We'll take you to Las Vegas. But we're starting the show with one of my favorite human beings on the planet, and that is Heather Dinich, who does a phenomenal job as always here at ESPN covering all things college football. Heather, it was a wild, wacky weekend in college football. And let's start with Go Blue, baby. Michigan, they go into Columbus. They take care of Ohio State. One could argue that Georgia, their best win of the season. So where does everything stand right now for Michigan on Tuesday? What can we expect?
Well, I think there will be people in that selection committee meeting room who will push for Michigan to be number one because they do now have the best win in the country against the committee's number 2 team. But my gut says they lean towards Georgia staying in the number 1 spot. And the reason I say that is because Boo Corrigan, the committee chair, has said recently that Georgia has separated itself from everybody else in the country as their number 1 team. I know Georgia struggled in the first half, just 10 points against Georgia Tech, 9 points in the first half last week against Kentucky. But at the end of the day, they took care of business. So I lean Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2.
TCU, they continue to win. I keep on saying, believe in those purple frogs, ribbit. But very interesting, our own Doug Kazarian this week said that even if TCU loses to K-State in the Big 12 title, it's still not going to cost them the playoffs. Curious, what's your take on that statement?
Well, I wouldn't say it so definitively, but I would say that if TCU loses, they're not necessarily out. And I would add to that their chances to get in as a Big 12 runner-up would increase if USC also lost in the Pac-12 championship game. And the reason I say that is because at some point here, we're talking about getting in by default, because I can tell you the selection committee is not going to put in a 3-loss Utah if they win the Pac-12. They're not going to put in a 3-loss K-State if they win the Big 12. So you've got Georgia, you've got Michigan, and who else? Well, TCU is still sitting there, number 1 in strength of record, but little to no margin for error because they have not moved up in the past couple of weeks. They had road wins, back-to-back road wins against a ranked Texas team and a mediocre at best Baylor team. But Anita, this is where we get into the door opening for Ohio State and even 2-loss Alabama. So if they were to lose, that's where that conversation would start to unfold in that committee meeting room.
Yeah, so you mentioned USC, another impressive win against Notre Dame. Many people thought it would be a trap game. Not me. I laid the 6. Actually, it got down to 4.5 before kickoff. But nonetheless, USC still in a situation where they have to beat Utah. If by chance they lose, it opens the door for
Ohio State, I think, is at the top of the list, and I think we're going to see this on Tuesday night if the Buckeyes are ranked number 5 ahead of 2-loss Alabama. Alabama still has a shot at this thing, but they need more than USC to lose. They need USC and TCU to lose. Ohio State is sitting there, and the selection committee really appreciates the win against Notre Dame and the win against Penn State, which could be a top 10 team. They also take into consideration that Ohio State just didn't get hammered by, South Carolina. Sorry, Tennessee. They got beat by the committee's number 3 team. That matters in the room, who they lost to. And it was a close first half. Entirely different story in the second half. But those are all things that they would take into consideration if one of those spots opens up in the top 4 on championship weekend.
So I got some very concerning news that there is a chance. If you say there's a chance, I'm hearing there's a chance that Alabama with 2 losses, Heather, could still get into the playoffs. Please say it isn't so. Please say it. How does that happen? Give us the scenario.
It happens with not necessarily a major miracle. I would call it a minor miracle. I mean, if you have Georgia winning, you have Michigan winning, but TCU and USC lose, there are holes that they have to fill. And so on Tuesday night, pay attention to these college football playoff selection rankings because I think Ohio State is going to be 5 and Alabama is going to be 6. But if Alabama is number 5 by some chance, that significantly boosts the possibility that they're first in line. Remember, Ohio State and Alabama aren't playing anymore. They're done. No conference championship game. Those two teams are sitting there. I say, if you're not playing on Saturday, you're praying. So both of those teams need help. Alabama needs more help. But consider this, their best wins are against Ole Miss, which lost to Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl, and a 1-point road win against Texas when Texas played the most of its game with a backup quarterback. That's going to be difficult for the committee to justify, but if those teams ahead of them lose, that's a very real possibility.
I'm sure you just heard my dogs just a second ago. They're not happy with the chances of Alabama getting in with 2 losses. Heather, you rock as always, my friend. We'll all be watching you. I'm sure you'll be all over ESPN tomorrow. So thank you so much for spending some time with us on Bet this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You got it. We take you to Las Vegas. Joe Fortenbaugh standing by. Joe, let's start. Look at you. Look at you.
Short sleeves. Short sleeves under the vest. I'm bringing it back. It's cool to do this. People who think I look like a fool when I do this, those people are just haters, Anita. They're just haters.
I don't think you look like a fool, Boo. I don't think you look like a fool. All right, let's dive right into it. Friday, we've got Utah going up against USC. USC favored by 2.5. The over-unders at 67. Boy, USC looked impressive. I love Caleb Williams. We're going to get into that in just a few minutes. But nonetheless, how are you playing this one?
USC. I've been on the wrong side of a lot of anti-USC sentiment, so I'm gonna have to take my medicine one way or another. But the handicap here for me comes down to Utah not playing at home. Utah at home is one thing. Very, very dangerous. Undefeated this season at home. 42 points per game at home. Utah on the road, a very different story. Went to Florida and lost to a bad Gators team. Went to UCLA and lost to a pretty good UCLA Bruins team, although they did get waxed in that game. And then they went to Oregon and they lost to the Ducks in a chance where they had a great opportunity to kind of turn the tables. I know this is a neutral site game, but it's not a home game. And if it's not in Salt Lake City, I'm not interested in backing Utah. I do think we're paying a little bit of a tax with USC, but I see them getting the job done here, so I will lay the points, Anita.
All right, game number 2, we've got Kansas State going up against TCU. TCU favored by 2.5. The over-under is at 61. I like the over here, right? Like, ever since K-State went to Howard, they're averaging 48 points a game. We saw what TCU was able to do against Ohio State, a good defense. Am I on the right side here? How are you playing this one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it being a lower scoring game, so I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I'm going to play TCU. When these two got together at TCU back on, I think it was October 22nd, the Horned Frogs were laying 3.5. So now you're on a neutral, and they're laying 2.5 in this spot. Some might say that there's value on Kansas State, but since it's moved to key number 3, I'll play the Horned Frogs. Last week was supposed to be a letdown spot or a sandwich spot, as they say. You're coming off the Baylor game, and then you got the championship game on deck. Here comes lousy Iowa State, and they cracked them. All this team does is cover spreads. They've missed like 2 all season long. I understand that they didn't cover against Baylor. That game was on the road. This is a neutral. Baylor's probably on par with Kansas State. It's a feisty team. Trying to beat them twice in the same season is going to be very difficult. But ultimately, I'm not betting against these guys. They've been the story of the college football season more so than anybody else. I know USC's a great story and it's a popular program, but this is the story. They're going to bring down the curtain in this game. I'm laying the points.
Yeah, rivet. Let's talk about LSU. A big number here. They're getting 16.5. Over-unders at 50.5. I like LSU here. Like, let's be honest, Georgia, they're in the playoffs, right? Like, they could rest their starters in the fourth quarter, let alone the second half. So I like LSU getting the points. How are you playing this one?
So, yeah, I think there's an angle there. Backdoor's wide open in this game. LSU's going to play hard. LSU probably getting a little bit of value because we just saw them lose to Texas A&M, so no one in the public's going to want to bet on them. I'd play the over here because I think you're going to get a spirited effort from LSU. Georgia's going to hang a number here one way or another. I don't think LSU is going to come out and limit these guys to 17 or fewer points. They're going to get 20 plus with ease. The question is whether or not they hang 30 plus, 40 plus in this game. And to your point on LSU, this is the big show for them. All right, they're eliminated from going to the college football playoff, but they can still stick it to Georgia, and they have played hard all season long. So I think they're going to go tough for 4 quarters. Maybe in the scenario you just laid out, Georgia throttles back, they get the starters out of the game, and then LSU scores some garbage time points, but only 50.5. This is not going to be a defensive matchup. Both these offenses can score, especially Georgia.
You got Purdue going up against Michigan. Michigan, again, this past Saturday looked great against Ohio State. Michigan favored by 60. The over-unders at 50.5. What's your play?
What a waste of a time this game is. What a waste of a time this game is. For all the talk that the Big Ten, and I'm a Big Ten guy, I went to Penn State, shout out, we beat everyone who wasn't good, and then the 2 good games, we lost to Michigan, Ohio State. Like always, way to go. Everyone who makes the case that the Big Ten's just as good as the SEC, this is the problem. You've got one good division, and then you've got a bunch of trash in the other division. And that trash never produces anything that's worth watching. Wisconsin fired their coach. Purdue, who even likes watching Purdue games? Iowa, can't score more than 2 points a game. Nebraska, fired Frost. Here comes Matt Rule on a 20-year contract. So, yeah, I'll lay it with Michigan because I'm sick and tired of this game meaning absolutely nothing every single year. Purdue isn't very good against the run. Michigan is going to run right through them in this game. Lay it with the Wolverines.
All right, let's turn our attention to the Heisman Trophy. And I'm so impressed, you're a voter. Let's take a look about the Heisman odds, and keep in mind, now these are the odds that came out before Saturday's game. Caleb Williams favored at -110. You've got Stroud, of course, Corum, unfortunately, could not complete the game against Ohio State. Dugan, who's been great, and Daniels as well. So with that being said, right now, where are you laying your money on this futures bet, Joe?
Well, Caleb Williams is a massive favorite at this point in time. Absolutely massive favorite. A lot of books moved it to minus, I don't know, I think I saw like minus 2,000 out there somewhere. And we talked about this last week. I told you, if you liked Michigan to give Ohio State a fight and you thought USC as a favorite would handle Notre Dame, this is what was going to happen. I vote on this, not to pat myself on the back as I pat myself on the back, but we see this almost every year. The last couple weeks of the season, everything gets turned upside down. One game now means way more than one game at the beginning of the season, right? It means so much more. It's weighted so heavily because of recency bias. And what did we see? Stroud and Ohio State laid an egg against Michigan. No one's going to ride with him anymore. Caleb Williams went and played great against Notre Dame. They're the story. Everyone's going to flock to Caleb Williams. I don't see enough happening against Utah to take that award away from him, especially since some of those other guys like Stroud aren't even playing. Corum, I mean, how much do you want to risk him against Purdue, considering how big of a favorite you are? Max Duggan's an interesting one. His team's undefeated, but he's been getting no love all season long, and I don't think he's going to get enough in that game over Kansas State to put him past Williams. Caleb Williams is going to be your Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes 2.0, baby. I'm excited to see where he's going to go once he does come out. But nonetheless, Joe, love the short sleeves. Maybe it's a summer thing, not so much a winter thing, but I still love it.
It's a Vegas thing.
Enjoy the game tonight.
It's a Vegas thing. Always
yeah, I'm sorry. No winter in Vegas. It's a Vegas thing. By the way, we'll have Joe Fortenbaugh's Monday Night Football picks coming up for you shortly. But first, we welcome in Erin Dolan. As always, she's with me on Mondays. Erin, how you doing? Let's dive right into it. It's reaction or no action. This is how we like to start the show. Here you go. The Giants win outright on Sunday, currently +1.5 home dogs against the Washington Commanders. Reaction or no action?
No action for me right now, only because I really do have to deep dive into some of these numbers. But the Giants have been really inconsistent despite their record being 7-4. If you look back to the last couple of weeks, they obviously lost to the Cowboys. Before that, they got
basically crushed by the Lions, which was really surprising, and then they got stomped on by the Seahawks. So I haven't really liked what I've seen from them as of recently. Meanwhile, for the Commanders, they've won 3 straight, and their most notable win was that Monday Night Football win against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I don't really trust either of these teams, and I know that's not my Philadelphia bias there. It's just not something I'm looking to bet right this second.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. No action for me, and really, it pulls at my heartstrings. As you know, I'm here in New York. I'm a big Daniel Jones fan. I'm a big Brian Dable fan. I love what this Giants team has done, but I feel like each and every week there's more and more injuries. You know, Daniel Jones really doesn't have a legit number 1 or even a number 2 wide receiver to throw to. His offensive line is banged up. The secondary is banged up. And they have arguably the most difficult schedule remaining, Erin, throughout the remainder of the NFL season. They still have to take on your Eagles twice, obviously Washington twice, and I think there's a possibility that maybe they could only win 1 more game, and that's potentially against the Colts in just a few weeks. Question number 2, the Bengals and the Chiefs. Will they go over? The over-unders at 51.5. Reaction or no action?
No action for me here. I know the Chiefs are giving up 22 points. The Bengals are giving up 21, and it feels like it's 2 really explosive offenses. I'm not sure about this number just yet. I mean, we've seen things as of recently when the Chiefs are playing against really good teams. I don't feel like they're always cashing the over. And this is also just much higher than the total we saw for the Chiefs versus the Rams game, which was not too long ago. Obviously, a better game here with the Bengals, but the over is 8-1 in the Chiefs' last 9 road games, but contrary to that, the under is always cashing for the Bengals. They're 6-0 versus their last 6 opponents with a winning record, and the under is also 9-1-1 in the Bengals' last 11 versus an AFC team. So I don't really have a good read on this one, so no action for me.
I'm going reaction here. Last time these 2 teams met, boy, were they. It was an explosive game. I'm thinking a lot of the same because Joe Burrow and this offense really have come together. And don't forget, potentially getting Joe Mixon as well as Jamar Chase back, which is exciting. So don't forget that AFC Championship game. That was the last time they faced each other. So I'm really excited for this game. Outside of the Miami Dolphins and the 49ers, this might be my favorite game on the slate this coming week. And again, reaction, I think it will go over. Question number 3, the Pittsburgh Steelers tonight will win 2 quarters and over the Colts, and you could get that at plus 155. Reaction or no action?
I'm going to have to go reaction on this one. I think it's really good value because the Colts, they're not that great at scoring, so there is a chance that the Pittsburgh Steelers could be up in at least 2 of these halves. More specifically, in the first half of games, the Colts, they score the least amount of points in the league with an average of 6 points. There's also a chance here, I'm just going to say it, Pittsburgh Steelers have played really, really tough competition. The Colts have not whatsoever. This might be just one of those games where the Pittsburgh Steelers get rolling in the first quarter. Things are looking good, and I think that they could be up at least for 2 quarters. So I do like this bet at plus 155.
I'm going no action here. This is the second time that we are on opposite sides because I think there could be a draw. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm so into the World Cup in soccer. There's no draw in football. I think these 2 teams offensively are very anemic. Defensively, they're on point, and I think they're I like the under in this, and we're going to get into our picks in this game in just a second, but I think that there's going to be some quarters where neither team puts any points on the board. So no action for me. Both these offenses, I think, are going to be struggling to put some points on the board tonight. With that being said, let's dive into the matchup. Again, the Steelers going up against the Colts. The Colts are favored by 2.5. The over-under's at 39.5. Erin, what's your play?
I don't like anything in terms of the spread, the total, or the money line. We're going to break it down to a few different ways that I'm going to play this. I do like the first half under 19.5 points. I already hit on this. The Colts are only averaging 6 points in the first half of games. As for the Steelers, they're only averaging 10. Neither of these offenses are explosive, but you know what? Both defenses are actually pretty good, and they're pretty good at stopping the run as well. So these quarterbacks are going to have to throw the ball. I'm not sure I can trust in Kenny Pickett or Matt Ryan for that matter. So I do think the first half will go under 19.5. 8.5 points. And I'd rather play it that way than play the entire game total, just because if this game is close, like odds makers expect, and this becomes a shootout or we see overtime and points are scored, I'd rather just focus on the first half total and go under 19.5.
I am going to play the under in this for a few reasons, and I'm going to give you some really interesting statistics here. Both teams only score on 13% of their offensive possessions. Both teams only average 27 yards per drive. Dramatic pause, marinate in that for a second. Pittsburgh Steelers, their games 60% of the time hit the under. The Colts, 82% of the time hit the under. Both have bad to horrible offensive lines. QBs are going to struggle. One is a rookie, so he's wet behind the ears. The other one is a statue. Hence why we call him Matty Ice. That's right. And of course, TJ Watt is going to be coming after him. So for me tonight, the play is the under 39.5. As always, Erin and I like to dive into a number of prop bets. So let's get started. Erin, what are the prop bets that you're going to be dabbling in tonight?
So I'm looking at Jonathan Taylor to go under 108.5 rushing and receiving yards. Now, I'm not going to lie, this morning on some of the books, it opened at 102.5. So this line has continued to move up, but I still like the under here. The reason being, he's only hit over this mark in 2 of 8 games. Those 2 games were against the Houston Texans as well as the Las Vegas Raiders. Both those teams terrible at stopping the run, which is why he was able to hit over this mark. As for this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, they're ranked 6th against the run. They've only allowed 3 running backs to go over a combined 103 scrimmage yards so far this season. The last time they allowed a running back to do that was in week 7. On top of that, TJ Watt's back in the lineup, so this defense can only be better and limit Jonathan Taylor to not go over 108 rushing and receiving yards. Now, on the other side of the ball, I'm looking at Deontay Johnson over 4.5 receptions. He's hit over this mark in 7 of 10 games. Now, he hasn't hit over this in the past 2 games, and the reason being, I think, is because they've really focused on running the ball. I don't think they're going to do that against this Colts defense, and instead, Kenny Pickett is going to have to throw that ball. When you're looking at a player like Deontay Johnson, who's leading the Steelers receivers in targets as well as receptions, you might be thinking, let's take a look at that receiving yards prop. Well, he keeps cashing the under on his receiving yards props, which is why I'm looking at receptions and going Johnson over 4.5 receptions.
Okay, mine, and I'm starting with my best bet. I actually like this prop bet, Erin, more than I like any play, even the under in tonight's game. And that's Freiermuth going over his receiving yards at 43.5. He's obviously Kenny Pickett's favorite target. He leads the team in targets as well as receiving yards as a tight end. 12 targets last week, 8 for 79, and the Colts play a ton of zone. Over 70% of the time they play zone coverage, and in against zone, Freiermuth is targeted 26% of the time. I also like Matt Ryan, under longest reception and interception as well. TJ Watt hitting after him. He's not going to have a lot of time. And Matt Ryan already 9 interceptions on the season. And last but not least, game total over 6.5 sacks. And I know you're saying, wow, Anita, that's a lot. Yeah, because these offensive lines are horrible. Their defense is good. Combined, these 2 teams have the most sacks of any 2 teams in the NFL in the last 3 games. The Colts giving up 3 sacks a game. So, and I do believe that there's going to be a lot of 3rd and long situation where both these defenses and defensive linemen are going to be able to pin their ears back and get after those QBs. So over a total of 6.5 sacks. Before we let you go, Erin, let's listen in. I want to see Joe Fortenbaugh, who was just on with us a second ago. He's got some plays and some picks in that Monday night game. So let's take a look at that and what he's got going on. And there it is. All right. So he's Pittsburgh and Indy. He likes Pittsburgh getting the points. He likes the under total like I do, and also Matt Ryan to throw an interception. Okay, great. So 2 of Joe's 3 picks I'm on as well. So that's fantastic. It's time for Pay Dirt Picks. Now, Erin, I'm sure you've missed this segment because you've been crushing it, lady. We haven't done this segment since November 14th. But, man, did you hit it with Devontae Smith scoring a touchdown? You laid $8. Your return was $21. And so you're sitting there with $130 and change. Me, loser, no chicken dinner. Sanders couldn't score, A.J. Brown couldn't score, Curtis Samuel couldn't score. So I'm sitting here with a measly $46. I don't even know what that will buy me in New York City. Like a used cup of coffee? Who knows? But with that being said, since you're crushing it, who do you have scoring a touchdown tonight?
I'm going to go with Michael Pittman Jr. I don't really have a great analysis as to why I think that. This is an absolute gut play. He's only had one touchdown this entire season. I just feel like Matt Ryan is going to find a wide receiver in the end zone today, okay? I think the obvious answer is to always go with a player like Jonathan Taylor and pick some of these running backs just to punch it in. But I don't know. I just have this weird feeling about Michael Pittman. So I'm going to put $10 on it. Again, not the best analysis. Sometimes you just bet with your gut. So that's what I'm going to do for Pay Dirt Picks this week.
Listen, I like it. The Pittsburgh Steelers are not great against wide receiver ones. So, and that's obviously what Michael Pittman is in this offense, even though you've got Campbell and you've got Alex Pierce. So I do like that. I've got two for you. I'm going to go $5 with Najee Harris. That's at plus 120. Why not? Listen, the last two games, they're committed to Harris, even though I do believe Warren is the better back, but he's dealing with a hamstring issue. Last two games, Harris has rushed for over 90 yards, and he scored 2 touchdowns the last game alone. So I do believe he finds the end zone again tonight. And again, I'm going with Freiermuth. He only has 1 touchdown on the season, but he is the favorite target for Kenny Pickett at plus 280. I'm going to lay $3 down and see what I can do there. Before I let you go, any thoughts on my 2 touchdown plays?
I like it. I think, sometimes these ones are tough. I mean, getting an anytime touchdown score, you never know which way these coaches are really going to play or what their game plan is. So these are not the easiest things to hit, Anita.
No, they are not. But you're doing well, $130 plus. And also
it's all right.
It's hard because, if you like the under like I do, you're not really thrilled in regard to a number of guys scoring touchdowns. But anyway, enjoy the Monday night game tonight, Erin. Always great seeing you on Bet. Okay, you got it. As always, we like to end the show with Before I Let You Go. And if you've been watching me on Daily Wager as well here on Bet, you know that I am all in on the World Cup. So we've got the United States going up against Iran tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock Eastern time. But before I give you my play, let's listen in. ESPN FC Alejandro Moreno has some insight on this matchup.
The picture for the United States men's national team in the World Cup is very clear. You beat Iran, well, you advance to the second round. How you go about doing that, well, that's not as clear. There's a lot of tension surrounding this game. I'm going to leave the politics to the side, and I'm going to focus on the field. And on the field, the U.S. has to be able to create enough opportunities in order to score goals, which they haven't done with any sort of consistency so far in the tournament. The silver lining to that is, well, perhaps they don't need to create as much because, as I just mentioned, there's a lot of tension in the game. Tension usually leads to mistakes. Mistakes lead to goals. And perhaps the United States are able to be opportunistic. They don't have to create as much. They just take advantage of whatever opportunities they do create. I'm going to take the United States 2-1, but much like their attacking group of players, I'm not that confident.
Yeah, me neither, Alejandro. So right now you can wager that the United States wins their match against Iran tomorrow at even money. If you think Iran's going to win, that's plus 290. Unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say this, I'm going with the draw at plus 225. Sometimes you can't bet with your heart. You have to bet with your head. And the reason being is because I do believe the United States have given themselves plenty of opportunity to score goals. They just haven't. Why? They don't have a real threat. Somebody who's going to look a goaltender in the eye and make them nervous, like a Messi or a Ronaldo. They just don't have those kind of strikers. Also, Iran, all they need is a draw tomorrow to advance out of the group. So I think they're going to play really conservatively. I think they're going to focus a lot on defense. So 2 ways, again, I'm playing this. I'm going with the United States with a draw at plus 225. And also, I think probably the best play here is the under at 2.5, and you can get that at minus 155. Some other plays that I like tomorrow: Ecuador going against Senegal. I like that to be a draw as well, and you can get that at plus 220. And England going up against Wales, I'm going under 2.5. I do believe England wins. I think they score. I think it's 1-0. maybe 2-0, but definitely no, it's not going to be 3. England has beaten Wales 6 times. They're 6-0 their last 3 matches. So I do believe England wins, but it's just a little bit too much juice for me. I think the play there is under 2.5 goals, and you could get that at, of course, minus 125. Anyway, these are my plays for tomorrow. It's going to be a fun afternoon. Again, I'm going to be rooting for the United States. I hope I'm wrong. At least my bank pocket hopes I'm right. But anyway, enjoy the match tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in to Bet.